Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right, well, we're excited today for another Cloud Podcast. I love all the guests that we get to have on. Today, we have Saood Shah. He is the Senior VP of Customer Experience over at Terminus. Saood, welcome to the show, man. Good having you on.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Artie, why don't you go ahead and just say hello to the crowd as well? You're my co-pilot and partner in crime here.
How's it going, everyone? Thank you all for joining another episode. Looking forward to this conversation. I think where we should start is just give us a little background of who you are, what you do, what does Terminus do, and then we'll jump right into some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with Terminus. Terminus is a revolutionary marketing technology platform. It's basically a multi-channel engagement platform that helps to drive sort of better results, optimal results for marketers through their campaigns. And so it's called account-based marketing. Basically, instead of throwing a wide net, we enable our customers to throw a spear and develop a really focused strategy to go and get the customers they want. And so ABM is taking off. It's super exciting, and it's exciting to craft their customer experience strategy as well. My background, I'm an engineer. I went to Georgia Tech, and coming out of school, I found myself delivering professional services at a single sign-on service provider. And I was just sort of checking the boxes until I was at Halliburton at one point, and the exec sponsor there, after I was done with my project, called me over, and he asked me, and I was done. Like, all right, I'm heading out. See you later. He's like, hold on, come over here for a second. Let's have a quick chat. Yeah, sure. It's like, so you're done? Like, yeah, great. Do you realize what you've done for us? Like, yeah, sure. I installed the web agent, and now, just giving him these basics. Like, no, listen. We have this many people at this company, and they forget their passwords, and these are the number of passwords they each have, and they forget their passwords with this frequency, which leads to this loss of productivity in dollars. And then he told me how much he paid for our software, and it was like a fraction, like a tenth. And so like the ROI became like really, really clear to me, as were the outcomes, which is really interesting. And so that was sort of my first like indication of like what really drives success for customers. It's about these outcomes. And so I got deeper into that concept, and like, how do you deliver professional services in a SaaS world so you're focused on the long-term success of your customer and delivery of those outcomes? And that was fascinating for me. So did a lot of PS, and then had an opportunity to work at Gainsight at some point, and so sort of delivered customer success strategy to hundreds of customers, which was really interesting and exciting. It's super meta to be a CS professional at a CS company. And then just been sort of running the post-sales services success support world more recently, and excited to be at Terminus doing that right now.
I love that that metaphor of, instead of casting a net, catching whatever's in the net, like throwing a spear. Like I've heard of a silver bullet, what's that one shot that will get it all done? And I love that metaphor. Just wanted to bring that up before we go any further.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you talk about the professional services side when in the SaaS world, and customer success, and being like I guess a newer concept over the last decade, and so much effort's always put into marketing and sales. And with the birth of the SaaS world, so much now is being put on the back end of the sale. How have you seen that progress, and how do you feel like a great customer experience, like making a great customer experience as part of your operation?
Yeah, I think it's key. And I think a great customer experience is sort of It's an aggregation of all of the moments that we have with our customers. And I sort of think of two things there. Like, what do customers feel when they are receiving an excellent customer experience? So how do we need to make them feel? What's the end result, right?
Mhm.
And then what can vendors do to deliver this customer experience? So in my mind, this is about like delivering the right type and amount of service that enables our customers to be able to derive value from the platform, from the solution, quickly and effectively. And ultimately, like, sort of this piece is what compels the customers to become advocates, longstanding advocates of the product and service, right? So if you can do that and you can provide the right type and amount of support, you can get to success. And there's a few things that we can do here, right? I think so how do you do that? And it's about crafting the right customer experience. So there's a few things that we can think about in that vein. I think it starts with the sale, right? And Dave Kellogg, mentor of mine at Host Analytics, his perspective was most of churn originates at point of sale. So like 90+% of churn happens at point of sale because you haven't accurately matched the customer's needs with the solution. And so if failure happens and churn happens, it's largely most of the time because you didn't dig deep enough and you didn't ask the right questions and you didn't do that match right, and it's incorrect sale. I think another big piece is like monitoring and managing our customer health. So like having deep insight into how customers are feeling, and to the extent to which they're getting value from the product. I think it's super important to like formally document and reinforce to the customer on a regular basis what the value, and quantify it if possible. What is the value of the service? I think a third is about time to value. So how quickly can you get them there, and how quickly can you get them to not just results and outcomes, but I think customers expect you to make them super successful. And so it's more about like getting them to success and then accelerating that success. So how do you do that quickly? And then I think a fourth piece is like, how do you make sure that the customer is at the center of everything you do as a company? Like it's an initiative that needs to be company wide, and everyone needs to think about the customer first, almost. And so, hey, here's a few things that I typically think about when crafting like customer experience strategy.
Nice. I love it. I'm going to bring you back to something you said at the top of the episode. Great example of going beyond just the technology piece, enabling a single sign-on or enabling passwords to be reset easily for the organization. You solved for not only the rapid response internally when people forget, so you create some productivity, but you also save a lot on the back end too, like people writing down passwords and putting it on there. So from a security standpoint, you probably saved a lot of headache and frustration and potential risk. In that example, you talked about technology and how technology can, help the business or the organization make that change. And, in your previous experience at Gainsight, obviously, you know a lot about customer health and leveraging technology at Gainsight to really help with those types of those metrics and KPIs. Where do you think the customer experience industry is going in the future? And how does technology play a role? Is it, the cornerstone? We should focus on technology first, or is it just there for us to lean on like a life raft when we need it? And we don't necessarily need to lean on it so heavily like a pillar?
I think it's a great question, and we can. This is such a deep question. I think there's two aspects to it, right? Like there's One aspect, which is how much human intervention is the right amount of human intervention in delivering customer success. And then the second piece is, to the extent where technology is necessary and is actually a force multiplier, like what are those key areas that are like seeing growth? And so, like, I think on the first one, if you think about your sort of software solution vendors and you think about like two axes, right? It's the maturity of the market and it's the complexity of the solution. So if you think about it in terms of a 2x2, and you think about these are the two things that determine how much human intervention you need in order to deliver a SaaS solution. So for example, if you have a super immature market, then you need your people like PS people and CSMs people to not only be relationship managers, but also sort of like evangelists, right? And they're going out doing thought leadership and they're trying to move the market. And you see that in a lot of like companies that are sort of category creators. And then the second piece is the complexity of the software, it's complexity of the solution. Like you could have something that's super easy and intuitive to use, like potentially a Slack or even a Google Doc, right? And you don't need a CSM for a Google Doc. However, if you have something that's super complex, like an SAP or even like Salesforce, you need people to help you manage that complexity and help you figure out what is ROI and what are the best practices and all that. So I think that there's no one like real right answer to like whether technology optimizes everything at the same pace for all software or all vendors. I think it depends on these variables as well. And so, however, it is doing a great job of giving tremendous insight to some of the largest organizations in terms of like where, if you have limited resource and limited human resource, right? You have limited people. Where should they be focusing? So giving insight into which customers we need to focus on via health scores, and then when you have when you have a risk, creating that ability to be able to very quickly and easily see whether there was a resolution plan, what that resolution plan is, and the progress towards resolving the issue, and if we're making the right progress or not. And the key there is really not seeing what are all the risky accounts. The key is what is the progression? What is the trend? Are these customers moving from more risky to less risky? And you need the ability to kind of see that, and technology is helping you see that, right? You can get points of time snapshot in a meeting, but the trend is what technology can really paint for you really well. And then sort of the last few things I'll say is like driving alignment across your go-to-market team around like how we deliver a success plan, like bringing everyone into one place, delivering real-time updates. And like, I think half of this is really about operational rigor, right? Driving deeper operational rigor into our activities, tracking activities, tying and correlating activities with outcomes, and also identifying where scheduled activities did not happen and that led to a risk, or like driving remedial action for activities that didn't happen. So technology helps with all of that, I think.
Yeah. And we've talked to a lot of customer success leaders and a lot around health scores, right? And how it can go a lot of different directions if you don't put in the right data or you're not asking the right questions. So how do you view just health scores, and how you from the beginning of, say, your career in customer success to where you're at now, and how that's maybe changed on how you approach health scores and how to get to that, I guess, that the golden goose, that good spot where you're like, okay, we got it dialed in now? Because I imagine that's pretty hard to do.
Hey, it depends on what the end goal is, right? Like if the end goal is to have this like perfect score, then I think that that's somewhat elusive. I think if you're clear about what that score actually means, and then the actions you should take pertaining to that score.
Mhm.
A health score is typically consisting of multiple scores. So I never stop at just sort of, oh, it's a 77. Actually, it's a 77, but then the health score consists of some key components. And so which of those key components are relevant in this case and what we should do about it is super important. Now, what those are, depends
Right.
on your business, your customer base, and what are the key risks in your sort of engagement model. So how it's so it has evolved over time where
Mhm.
I think when a technology is new, you tend to over engineer things. And I think people have gone and organizations have gone. And I think even my tendency in the past was, oh, here's a new variable, we should throw it into the health score. Well, it just
Mhm.
goes and dilutes everything else that's in there. And so I think over time, like my key learning has been to start simple,
Yeah.
start really simple with like 1 or 2 or 3 measures tops, see how it goes, see if it's giving you like sort of the outcome you're looking for, and then evolve to maybe not add a lot more, but replace and fine tune how you measure your existing measures and how you weight them to get to an overall
Right.
kind of health score.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've seen.
And you mentioned the operational rigor, right? If you're constantly adding new elements to this health score and juggling it around, like you're not going to get a true path, and you're just going to be all over the board. And already gave a great example on another podcast of it's like baseball nowadays, right? They track stats galore on like pitching and base, on base percentages, all these different things. There's so much data pouring in that at some point the manager has to look at all that and go, okay, what's most important for this ball game, right? And then a lot
That's
of it
right.
comes down to human instinct and just. But then you have the money ball side, which is just all data crunching. The stats say bunt here, or pinch run here, kind of thing. It's got to be. There's just a lot of variables, and when you start pulling in different KPIs and things like that, it's just. I imagine it can get convoluted and then take away from that rigor that you're talking about.
Well, or yeah, both sides to it. It sure can get complicated, but I think that we have tools now that help us kind of manage that complexity. So for example, I think it's important to, yes, you have 100 data points that you can manage about your customers at any given time. I think one of the first things that we did when we evolve a customer success organization is try to actually find out what the right success attributes are. And so we do encourage customers to sort of have data scientists on staff, and if they do, or we can work with them on figuring out sort of, okay, what are the key measures, and you might have 50 of them, and then creating a data model and then correlating the key measures to actual like customers that are retaining at a higher percentage as well as growing for you, and then driving that correlation. At one place I was at, we correlated success very closely with adoption of the platform. And we looked at adoption from like depth and breadth, meaning how often they were logging in versus how much of the product they were using. And so using data science, we were able to determine that there is an optimal usage of the platform that's correlated with higher success. And then we formulated our professional services methodologies to drive customers towards that level of adoption.
Yeah.
And that's one way to like drive success.
So I want to talk a little bit about change. There's obviously an event that happened in 2020 in March that kind of shook up everything, not including or not limited to a lot of the things that we do in our customer service world, like agents going to work from home, or even our consumers changing their buying patterns or not even buying at all, or even consumers having to do homeschool while working, while also doing their chores throughout the day. So there's been a lot of change, and some of the dust has settled, but some of it has really not settled. Um, Specifically to the contact center or your team or your customer experience team, how have you managed through some of those changes, whether it's the employee changes or the behaviors of the customers? Obviously, all those inputs that we have with like health score and ways that we measure, those all changed as well. Maybe handle time went up, or maybe um, meetings did not go off that normally would go off because the end consumer is busy or can't do it at that time because they have to do homeschool. So talk to us a little bit about what the change was like for you guys. How do you manage that change? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So much change over the last 2 years as we went remote and now are starting to go back. We actually had an all hands this week, and I was in Atlanta yesterday, and it was super fun. It was not mandatory at all, but we allowed a portion of our employee base to come on site and engage with the rest of the team, and if they wanted to, and it felt a little bit more normal. But in terms of change, I think we did a few things to help. Number one, we excuse me, we tried to make the change easier for our team members by just sort of facilitating some new perks in our perks program. That's sort of one piece, right? Where we created a perk specifically to help our employees redesign their home office, and you have a sort of an allowance for that. Also sort of redesigned other perks to be very conducive to a remote environment, like an Uber Eats allowance and stuff that helps them be more productive in a remote world. I think we also sort of from a management philosophy perspective, we doubled down on time we were spending with our people. And so if we were doing one-on-ones for 30 minutes, we recommended as a leadership team that, well, maybe we should extend it for more, maybe ensure that they're having the amount of time that they need. And then you have the challenge of Zoom fatigue, right? And so at the same time, you want to spend more time with the people, but maybe not necessarily on the screen. And so encouraging people to take walks and turning off the screen if it's just sort of a conversation at the same time. Right. And so just trying to invest in sort of supporting our people. And then there was a whole slew of other activities where we were looking at how to connect with our customers in a better way. And so looked at a lot of tools that helped us connect better and create workshops, use features within Zoom where you have breakout rooms, and double down on kind of strategy meetings, etc. So at the end of the day, though, I think sort of helping to drive change, though, is largely about it's about leadership, and it's about communicating effectively to our customers sort of why this method is the best method. And those customers could be internal or external, right? Like, we have a situation, we're trying to get to these goals, and here are some best practices that we believe can help bridge the gap. And here's why this is best. And here's what's in it for you. Sort of, and here's how you can be more effective, we can be more effective. It's sort of better for everyone. And so sort of that's some of the thought that we've tried to put into reorganizing how we engage with our customers and employees.
How did you find just productivity, if that was an issue, keeping employees motivated when they went to home? Or did you find that it was something that needed to be addressed? Like how did that change or not change?
I think we found that people were working more than less. And you know, I don't sort of never was a believer in the model where you're looking at time spent in the office as a proxy for productivity. Productivity for me has always been about results and outcomes and the end sort of output. And so I think in my world or like sort of when I'm working with my team, you know, we're not sort of measuring
Right.
time spent on the desk very much. And so if your work is good and if it has high quality and if it's being completed on a timely basis and we feel like it's challenging, it'll work. That's kind of been my experience. So I haven't seen the productivity challenges.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of other people, and it seems that the ones that we've talked to have actually had people working more because they're not commuting anymore. And
That's
there's
right.
a lot more time where it's like, okay, I'm done with breakfast. Let's walk upstairs or just head out to the home office. You know, it's very easy to work longer and get things done, right? You can get more work done if something extra is put on your plate. There's more time to do it now. And so most of the people we've talked to haven't struggled with that. I don't know how it's maybe more so on the customer support side or, things like that, where it gets a little more challenging with less on the executive level than on the support side.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the reduction in the commute is sort of a huge game changer in terms of, satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, we found that a lot of our coworkers have time to work out now, do some physical exercise versus sitting in a car and commuting. And that's just, great for mental health, lets you like reset your day in the morning or, after work. And that's pretty awesome. One last question I have before we kind of wrap up, because I know we're getting close to time. What KPIs do you look at on a regular basis? What do you report up? What do you choose to look at and see and hold yourself against? What are those KPIs that are kind of your foundational KPIs?
Yeah. Hey, we look at lots and lots of numbers in all parts of the business. And so I'll try to keep it to like 2 KPIs that are possibly the most relevant for us. And so it's different for sort of the different parts of our customer experience. And so if we're looking at support, typically in our support team, we're looking at like time to first response and obviously looking at sort of contractual SLA attainment, but then also looking at time to sort of full resolution and definitely CSAT. And so that's largely the outcomes. And I love kind of going through the comments in the CSAT. And it just gives you a lot of visibility into how customers are feeling about that interaction. I think on the professional services side, again, there's a CSAT, and that is super important, especially in a scaling company where you're using services to scale ARR growth. I think onboarding CSAT is super important. And then we try to measure time to value, and that's critical to figuring out how rapidly you're able to get your customers to success and to value. And of course, from a professional services standpoint, you're also sort of trying to measure the efficiency of your business. So yes, there are like utilization, billable utilization, productive utilization, margin, bill rates, book rates. But I think you kind of get into those when you start to look at your professional services business as a revenue source and even a margin source. I think in the earlier businesses, it's largely a source for customer outcomes. And that's kind of where you start. So CSAT and time to value are just critical. I think on the CSM side, we would look at customer health for sure, and specifically we'd look at trends in terms of customer health. Where was there a spike or a dip in customer health? And then of course, we're very focused on outcomes and verified outcomes. So we actually have a milestone or a formal recognition that a customer has delivered, has received. These are the 5 outcomes that they're after, and we have delivered on 3 of them. And so it's a very formal, quantified recognition of whether a customer has received outcomes. So it's so we can make a metric around across the customer base, who has received outcomes and how frequently are you delivering outcomes, and which customers are not getting outcomes. So that's I think a big one.
Yeah.
And these are sort of leading indicators. And then the lagging outcomes are, of course, GRR and NRR, and we keep a close eye on those 2.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's great insight to kind of peel the onion back and see, what things you guys are following, and it helps other people as they're looking to see like what we should follow. Is absolutely great. One last, thought, and we always like to bring up leadership and mentorship and whatnot. And I'll ask, in your career, have you had anybody that's helped bring you along, or vice versa? And like, how do you approach leadership and mentorship in your career?
Oh man, what a great question, and it's something super passionate about. I look at sort of this model of servant leadership, and think about it a lot too. So like the only way I can be successful is if I've helped my team be successful, and that's sort of first and primary, reason for the existence of a leadership role. I think CEO of Gainsight, Nick Mehta, is a fantastic human first leader, and it was great. He'd get up in front of the company and inspire us with human first wisdom almost on a weekly basis, and it was awe-inspiring every time, and he put it into practice. And you could see the impact of his values in how he decided to work with us as employees, and how he managed customers, and strategic company decisions too. So kudos to Nick, and super inspirational, and learned a lot from him.
Yeah, it's great. I think, any executive that we talk to has similar stories where they have someone from the C-level. If it's not the CEO, it's someone like the COO, where they're passionate, they're great leaders, and it's all about servant leadership now, right? Where they're providing so much value to the people that are their employees, right? And we see that trickle down to where on the management level, they're trying to do the same thing for their people. And it's a great flow of starts from the top, right? The culture. And if your executive team is building a great culture, it's just going to trickle down all the way down to everybody on the front lines, all the way up. That's absolutely great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see it in terms of organizations as they develop. And if you seed the organization with the right values, as they grow, you're able to see sort of the fruit of that in terms of a good culture. And so it's super important to see that right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Saood, I have to say, it's been great having you on. These conversations can go on for so long, especially when we get into topics like leadership, mentorships, and it can go on forever, which I love. But unfortunately, we have a time stop on these. But it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on with us and just discuss the inner workings of what you guys are doing at Terminus, how you approach leadership, how you approach, the customer success and professional services. It's been absolutely great having you on.
Hey, thanks so much, Alex and Artie. This was super fun, and appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for watching. So everyone who's watching here, for taking the time to listen to the podcast, and please subscribe or watch our next podcast coming up. We're trying to do at least one a week, and I think we've been doing about 2 a week. So really excited to get this thing going, and we're almost at episode 50. This one might actually be episode 50 when it releases.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining. And don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.